All right, Candace, we're here today in the new Newburyport office of Engel & Volkers. Give me a little bit of a rundown on what's nearby.
Yep. So we are very close to downtown Newburyport, right next to one of my favorite restaurants, the Black Cow. There's also a lot of boutique places around. I love to shop at Barron Home for home decor, and also Smitten for clothes. So very great location here in Newburyport, walking distance to everything.
It's a great little city to walk around.
It is, yeah, and I'm excited to be in this new space here with my friend Jake. So Jake, tell me what brought you to the business of mortgages?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of all came together, let's say January 2021, but I've been in the real estate space for over a decade. I had my real estate license down in the DC area and was working in property management, managing HOAs and condos in that area, which totally different beast than HOAs and condos are up here. But that's a grind of a career, and definitely was feeling some burnout and ready for a change. And then kind of what I alluded to, January 2021, we found out that my wife was pregnant with our second son.
Congrats.
And we had kind of always talked about raising our family in this area. It's a place where I grew up. I grew up in Beverly. And, you know, again, kind of everything just fell into place. Right time to make the move. And in doing so, I decided to make the jump from kind of the real estate property management side of things into mortgages. Again, love the real estate space, and I'm a weird guy and like playing with numbers. And it all just kind of felt like the right fit. So June 2021 is when we officially made the move up, and I got started in this career. Market obviously shifted a little bit shortly thereafter, but I am still loving, honestly, every minute of it. I couldn't be happier with where I'm at. In terms of you, what got you into real estate?
So I've always worked with people in a service industry, and I come from a background of hairdressing for 20 years. And then I felt like moving into real estate would give me a little bit more flexibility with my schedule, which is very important, being a mom of two and being able to, you know, take the kids to sports and school activities, things like that, and still being able to work with clients and provide a good service, helping them find their dream home. It's very fulfilling. Yeah. So that's what brought me here. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the market. Yeah. So particularly the inventory, which is low. Yes, and 6 months supply in inventory and under is, generally speaking, a seller's market. And right now we have less than 1 month's supply, making it a very tough market.
Very tough market for buyers right now. And it creates a scenario where buyers are doing some pretty crazy things.
Yeah, driven by emotions, I would say.
For sure,
yes.
For sure. Feeling like they need to do something super quickly, again, from that emotional standpoint, or else they're going to lose out on an opportunity to buy a house.
That's right. So some important advice for buyers is to make sure that they take their time when they're looking at a property. You go to a showing, take your time, don't just rush in and out of there in 15 minutes. It's a big purchase, very important purchase, and they should spend as much time as they want and need to in the property. And if possible, get a second look at it another time, make another appointment, go back the next day with fresh eyes, fresh perspective. I know when you were buying a house.
Yeah. So when we were house hunting early 2022, we would kind of put together a slate of, you know, a handful of houses that we were interested in that weekend, and the top 2 or 3 we would try to get into as early on in that kind of open house window on Saturday. 2 of the kind of biggest things that I learned was, first and foremost, if it's a no, make that decision very quick. If it's a no, get out of that house and move on to the next one. If it has potential and might be a yes, spend as much time in that house during that first open house on Saturday as you can. Really kind of try to envision yourself living in that space, right? But then coming home, obviously talking about it consulting with your significant other, whatever it might be, even sleep on it. And if there is another opportunity for an open house in that same property on Sunday, and in sleeping on it, you decide that it's still something that you're super interested in, go back. Try to be one of the first ones in that open house on Sunday, and try to be there for potentially even the entire 1 to 2 hour window that is that open house. But look at the property with a totally fresh set of eyes, and you will start to see kind of all the flaws that you missed on day one, and it's going to help to really kind of help make that decision. And it's still in that same weekend where, hopefully offers aren't due until Monday or Tuesday. You've now seen the place twice, and you've spent a couple hours potentially in that property before making one of the largest purchases of your life.
That's right, and it's a really good point that if you go in and you know that it's definitely not for you, don't waste more time, right? Like, don't spend more than 15 minutes if you know it's a definite no, and then that way you have time to go to the next open house, and you can spend more time at that one if you like that house more.
Yep.
Yeah.
It allows you to really kind of figure out whether or not there are any like red flags on that particular property. You've actually got a scenario recently where clients got an accepted offer, and then in the inspection process, maybe.
Yes. So red flags, when you go to a property, if they have a septic tank and you're looking at the lawn and there's a particularly green, thriving section of that lawn, something is generally up with that septic tank. And so at a home inspection not too long ago, the septic inspector pulled up the plastic cap over the septic tank and pulled a lunchbox cooler out of the septic tank. And I jokingly was like, oh my gosh, there are teenage kids living in this house and they were hiding their beer in the septic tank? I'm like, that's the worst place to hide it. Ugh. But it was needless to say, the septic tank was a fail, and I advised my clients on basically rough estimates, how much it's going to cost, whether they want to move forward or not, and we decided to pull out of that deal, and I think they made the right decision on that one.
Yeah. It kind of similar scenario for a couple of the clients that I had. They missed out on the first opportunity to purchase this home, but it came back on the market because the initial contract fell apart because those home buyers did a septic inspection, and it came back that it was quote unquote failing. So when it went back on the market, that concern was disclosed. My buyers came in, had the opportunity to look at it, kind of make a judgment call on it. We also put into the offer that there would be a seller concession to replace or repair the septic system if it was deemed necessary. And in that kind of additional inspection, those additional inspections that we did, it came up that septic system is perfectly functional at this point in time. That obviously no guarantee that it's going to work forever, but it gave my buyers the opportunity and kind of that cover to say, okay, we think that we're in good shape. We've got the funds saved up for it if need be, but let's continue moving forward. And now, a year and a half later, they're happy in that home, and they haven't spent a dime on the septic.
They didn't have to replace it yet.
Yeah,
that's great. That's good news. That's good news. Yeah. One of the hurdles that sellers often face when they get to their closing time is dealing with their transitional time of closing on their sale of their house and then purchasing a new house, and what they're going to do with their stuff, where they're going to live for that period of time. So a useful tool in that scenario is a use and occupancy agreement. But I understand on the lending side of things, when it comes to the mortgage, there are some restrictions with that.
Yep. So the longest use and occupancy that you can have is going to be 60 days. And that comes down to, again, kind of on the mortgage side, buyer needs to take occupancy of the property within 60 days to qualify for primary residence status. And so obviously that's something to keep in mind in terms of when you're negotiating and having that use and occupancy being a negotiation tool. Nonetheless, it's a super helpful and can be super powerful tool. Having that flexibility can allow the seller to, maybe they're under contract on a new construction home that isn't quite ready yet. By allowing the seller to stay in the property after closing, it gives them the ability to only have to move once. And we all know that moving is the least fun part of home buying.
It's the worst.
Yeah, absolutely the worst. And so having that flexibility from a buyer can help push your offer to the top of the pile.
That's right. Yes, it's a great tool when presenting an offer to a seller. It makes your offer stand out. It's stronger to allow them that flexibility.
Yeah. You kind of had a bit of a unique use and occupancy situation pop up recently.
I did, yes, where it was actually the reverse. So typically we see it on the seller's side and use that way as a kind of bargaining chip, negotiating. And in this particular scenario, I was working with a client who was purchasing a home. And his time was up with where he was going to be living or was living previously. And for him, it was important that he actually gets to move into the house before buying it. So totally the opposite scenario instead of remaining after a sale. And it all worked out. The house was unoccupied and the seller agreed to allow him to move in. So essentially he was renting his house before actually buying the house. And it was a very unique way to structure a deal so that it worked out for everybody and everyone was happy at the end of that one. Pretty unique situation. Yeah. So before a client is actually ready to start looking for their home, how should they best prepare themselves for that process?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of hear it all the time, but it's never too soon or too early to have a conversation with a lender, especially honestly for maybe some credit challenged, for lack of a better term, credit challenged home buyers. If you know that your score is not perfect, which it doesn't need to be perfect, but if your score is, I've got a client who I'm working with and have been working with for the past several months, who when we first started talking, ran her credit and it came up at about a 550, mid 500s, which is below the minimum credit score that we need to be able to qualify for an FHA program, which that's going to be about a 580. We have tools at our disposal that allow us to kind of put together a game plan or roadmap where, you know, depending on whatever that homework might be, paying off some credit cards, staying on time with credit card payments, so on and so forth, we can quickly see, you know, positive gain in credit scores. In her case, again, we kind of started talking in February and working on a game plan. She's been working diligently at it, and recently, within the past couple weeks, she's now up to a 625 credit score.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, so some good movement in the last couple months.
Absolutely, and that makes her a stronger buyer, gives her more buying power.
Definitely a stronger buyer, which coming back to that, qualifications for different loan programs have different credit score requirements. As I mentioned, 580 is generally speaking kind of the benchmark for FHA. To qualify for a conventional loan program, minimum credit score that we're going to be looking at is going to be a 620. And then if we're maybe talking about mass housing as an option, minimum credit score that we need there to qualify for is a 640.
So there's no one magic number.
There's no one magic number. It's all going to kind of depend on what the scenario is, what your situation is. But when it comes to, okay, 580, 620, 640 might open the door, the better your score is still nonetheless, it's going to change it's going to impact your buying power.
That's right.
The better your credit score, the better interest rate that you're going to have access to. The better the interest rate, kind of the more buying power that's going to give you.
It gets them one step closer to purchasing a home and making a great investment, because we all know real estate is one of the best investments that you can make. And some good advice for buyers looking to make a good investment is to look for a home where they can add value and add appreciation over time by even doing improvements to the house, something where years from now they've either added square footage by finishing the basement or room for improvement on there to best safeguard their investment. Well, it's been very interesting chatting with you today, Jake, and I appreciate all of your advice. For folks out there looking for more advice about mortgage, they should contact Jake from Movement Mortgage. And to start looking at homes and investigating more about the real estate market, I'm Candace with Engel & Volkers.